the 10 is up there. You know, it's actually too hard looking in two different places, so I'm going to sacrifice some screen real estate. Sacrifice.
That's nice screen. Oh, there. Well.
There you go, sacrificed. And get a nice window open with good sized text. And see, this is what I mean. It's good that we started a little bit after 7. It's finish off. Control Alt 3. Yep. By the way, I'm probably not here at the meetup meeting either. I don't know if I checked into that. We'll eventually remember to do that, probably.
Oop.
Oops, that's not what I want to do. What? Chrome has this annoying habit of allowing its extensions to steal my key bindings.
That's because Chrome's just so awesome.
Yes, Chrome's so awesome.
I think Chrome's full of shit.
There we go.
Alright.
And font size. That's good font size. What size is my terminal? That's within reason.
For some reason, I'm not seeing it. Oh, there.
All right. Play is one of those, is a web framework thing, kind of, I guess you'd call this Rails style, because Rails was kind of the first thing that did it. And to briefly explain to those that don't do any web development or any development at all, I'll explain what I mean by Rails style. This was originally brand new and actually fairly uncommon when Rails started out. There were some other things that did it in Perl that I had used, but nevertheless, Rails style is you've got a program, a command line program, you run it, it writes code for you, and then based on that, underneath that, you have a bunch of libraries that handle writing a modern web application. And what modern means is models using controllers, views, which are essentially things that I almost said code, but not really appropriate. Spew is a good word. Spew HTML out and HTML and CSS out to the browser. Well, actually, hopefully, static files are actually spewed out by the web server. Anyway, so I'm kind of trying to explain this in general terms for those who are web developers, despite the fact that the rest of the talk will be kind of boring if you're not. But anyway, so this framework is called Play. It's a framework that you can use in Java or Scala. The creator of Scala calls it Scala. I will give myself 5 minutes. It is now 19:09, 6 minutes almost, to talk about Scala, just so you know what the hell I'm talking about. Scala is a really fun programming language. It is a functional programming language. It runs on the JVM, so you can write functional things on it. So, I have never particularly been fond of Java. I've been fond of functional programming language. Whoops. I'm also apparently not fond of remembering syntaxes in context of doing demos, but nevertheless, we can continue. So, this is how you define a function. And functions, it's actually a method, the implicit object, but I don't need to talk about that because you don't care. So what's cool about this is in Java, this would be at least a couple of lines or implied lines, because you have to have a return statement because of its roots. And this is important for what I'm talking about with the web stuff. The return value of a function in Scala is the last expression in it, or in this case, the only expression, which is x times 2. So when you run that, you will define a function. Probably without syntax. Oh, what? And class names and type names are always uppercased. So, that right you're seeing there when it says double and all that gobbledygook is the type of the function, because functions have types too, and in fact functions are values, so you can assign them around, I think. Apparently not. Yeah, anyway, not important, because we're not going to use that. But I did need you to know that the value, when you say something like this, that the return value of the function is going to be the last thing in it. That you can have arbitrary other stuff. So you could do, well, you can't change the value of x because it's a parameter. But
Do you have return x equals x times 2 unless x equals 5?
but no, the other thing we can do is we can multiply x by 2 and not use the result and return pants. Now note that the type of double now returns string, so if we try type, if that returns pants, and in fact it always returns pants. But we actually want the original function definition back, so we'll do that. Those curly brackets are completely optional. Note that the equal sign is not optional because every function definition looks like an assignment. That's kind of a crash course in all that you need to know about Scala right now. It's a really cool language. It has classes, just like Java. It is Java. It compiles to Java, and it can access every library that's written in Java. That's really useful. I think Chris can mention how many vast amounts of libraries are written for Java, some bad, some good. If you want to do something, and you probably can do it in Java, and with this you don't have to actually use Java.
And the JVM happens to be fast, stable, and not have a severe locking problem.
By the way, and I will also showcase one other weird element of the syntax is ensuring, which you can pass a statement like this to, so that you can ensure that the result of your double, I think that's right, might be a syntax error. Oh no, it worked. So that code right there is like an assertion. It means that the value of this will always be greater than 2. So if you try to double a negative number, you get Java style stack trace. That's what you wanted to get because it was the actual stack traces in assert failed. So it's a normal Java error there. Java lang assertion error, perfectly normal. Quite cool the way that's written. So if you pass it a value that it likes, it also fails. If you pass it 20, there we go. Because 2 isn't greater than itself, so that's why that didn't work. Because we're not actually doubling there, are we? So Scala makes Java very. I will actually go into this for a second because I only have 1 minute left that I said I would. Everything in Scala, unlike Java, is a method. So what we're actually doing when you write code like that, something like that, that's not how it works. Syntax might be that. I forget the syntax for it, but multiplication is a method call. It may get compiled down to the Java bytecode for multiplication, but on the surface you can treat any operator and every operator as if it were a method call.
It feels a little bit like Lisp.
Well, yeah, it's purely function. It's not purely function, but it is a functional language. It's very much like Lisp. So, and it's also a bit like Ruby. And someone just highlighted in your window. It was work. I don't need to look at that right now. So that's Scala. So we're going to make an application with Play, which I think was originally written for Java, but has some good support for Scala now. The relationship between the two is not apparent to me at this time, but it doesn't need to be. There is another framework for Scala, a web framework in Scala called Lift. Lift is a lot more fancy.
Yes.
And a lot more fancy. It's stateful. It's not like anything else you've ever used.
Well, it's a purely functional web framework.
Yeah.
You must love functional languages. You can do cool things like write comment-based chat apps.
Yep, that's their hello world in the Lift framework is writing a web-based chat thing, which if you've ever tried to write one of those, is pretty difficult. But anyway, Play was seemed a lot more simple, and I'm basically going to use this to rewrite the SLUG site and have a new skill to my inventory. So, start out, I want to create an application. It's called Megapants. It asks me if that's the actual name I want to use, yes. And then it asks me if I'm doing Java or Scala. Obviously, it prefers Scala because that's the first option, so we will do that. And then it's like, have fun. And it creates a whole bunch of stuff. And it does create a good amount of stuff. That's the directory tree that it creates. Printed out on the screen for you. There's the project stuff, the build file, application conf, routes. So if we just want to run this, we can just go into the directory. and run play. And it's going to do some stuff. It's actually going to download code using Maven or something. It's using Maven repos at least to download the code.
I think Play uses either Gradle or no, it's Scala.
Well, Gradle uses it uses Maven repos. It's not using Maven itself, but it's using the back end.
There's a Scala build tool, SBT.
SBT, yeah,
SBT is what it uses.
Yeah, but that which you also utilize. I actually wrote an SBT build file for a project.
Yeah, everybody uses the Maven repo layout because the dependencies are so nice.
Yeah, so anyways, this is the interactive REPL for the entire app, which apparently has documentation, which I didn't notice before. That's cool. Launch the H2 web browser. I don't know what that is. Publish your application. That's cool. Run. And default port. Now it's doing all the stuff, resolving all the dependencies, and it's running, and it's telling me to go to an IPv6 address, which unfortunately my URL highlighter doesn't recognize. So, well, we don't need to actually do that because we can just go to localhost. My screen is much brighter than the projector. And why are you seeing this page? You're using Play 2.1. And there you go. And it tells me what I need to do next, in fact. So, we're going to do that. Routers. So, we will go back to the window that we were in, which was here, with a font size that you can actually read. I just typed Control-C. So, what's that? Route. Hey, look at that. And it's going there already. Yep. Yes, well, we're going to change that. Well, what the example code they give was slightly different. We're going to go to a method called Windex. How do I know that's a method? Because I've actually kind of gone through this once before. So, we're gonna now here's the thing. So, there is some stuff going on here. Is that a curly bracket or not curly bracket? Yes, it is. Okay, the font that this size is. And their example was not the same as that. Yeah, it was the same as that. So it's rendering it with view. But we're going to change that. So what if I don't pass it view? What if I pass it string? Will that work? Well, actually. That's actually parentheses, because that's a constructor. I think if I leave this running, it will like automatically reload and do all sorts of fun things like Jetty and things do. Oh yeah, auto reload. I could have just left it running in that terminal if I wasn't a lazy person. Let's see. I think at the very least this will generate a nice stack trace. Yep. Hey, look! We have a web. We now have an application that, when you request, the root of it returns the string pants. And I think we're done here. This is the next version of the SLUG website. So I'm going to leave.
Seems like
Keep it in your pants.
a setup that would be really good if you're trying to learn how to.
Yes, that's the whole point of this. The SLUG Rails and the
Why
Catalyst.
something interesting with it and have it give us the time?
I don't know how to do that. In
You should
Scala.
find out.
I can probably do that. And because we're done, actually, this is kind of going, you're actually playing in right to my plan. Because Scala is not Java, and Scala has the one thing, actually, Josh will correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to say that Scala doesn't have, or sorry, Java does not have a REPL, but Scala does.
What?
A REPL, a read eval print loop, which means that's what I was doing earlier. Whee! I don't know why I typed that string. I was actually typing something else. But so, what are the Java date libraries called?
Datetime.
Is that what's its namespace? Java. I don't actually need. No, look. Tab completion. Java
util datetime.
date.
I use Joda time. That's why.
Date. Let's see, date. Is that it?
Just construct date that should provide a,
Woo!
there you go.
Well, that string, that has a two-string method, right? Because we're obviously seeing it's a two-string method.
Of course it does.
Very
It's
good.
Java.
All right, we need this window to also be a good font size. That's good, right? And we're gonna go. Return OK. And like I said, this is Scala, where we can import everything that Java gives us. Java, util, date. That's what it was, right? There's a few differences if you know Java. We don't use the asterisk because that's a valid symbol, because it's the asterisk method. So instead we use the underscore, which isn't a valid method. I'm not entirely sure that's a clean design decision, but that's the way it works.
Yeah,
So
that sounds very limiting.
what?
That sounds very limiting.
Probably. In a minute, we're going to look at the views, the view HTML and templating stuff, which is actually what we'll need to use for active direction. I didn't do anything other than save the file, by the way. I just saved the file and I went over here and hit refresh. This is actually, if you've used any other web framework, if you used Django and Python, Catalyst and Perl, Rails, of course, with Ruby, if you use any of those, this isn't anything majorly surprising for you. The cool thing about this is it's running on the JVM, so it's a lot faster than any of those, and you get all those nice libraries.
What is it that we should be surprised by?
The fact that I just edited the file, saved it, and refreshed the web page
Without having to reset?
Yeah, everything. It's just automatic. Yeah, automatic review. Automatic reloading. Except this is compiled to bytecode and it's fast. Jake- No, so is Perl and Python are compiled to bytecodes too. That doesn't mean they're optimized and compiled to native code by JIT. Although
PHP doesn't cover that, like,
Threads.
Threads. PHP's biggest application is Facebook, which is compiled into C++.
That's because PHP is working on C++.
No, it's not quite. They actually have their own. Anyway, besides the point, this is really cool. So, right now we're just returning a string. There's obviously nothing good about that. The first page that it was giving us was actually superior because it had HTML and looked nice. So how is it doing that? But actually, first, what the hell is this action thing? I believe it's being. It's not a class because you're calling it with a block. It's confusing. So,
Could be an anonymous function.
Yeah.
oh, and actually, in fact, there's an entire different detour here because this is that thing called application there isn't a class. So there detours on that. 25 minutes past the hour, and I was planning this to be a long talk. So detour number 2 for the evening. Scala. Scala, there's a problem in almost all languages, and the problem, it's a disease really, it's static methods. Anyone that's on Java, are static methods encouraged?
They're highly discouraged, but people like to abuse them anyway.
And people like to abuse them. Scala made it so there aren't static methods. How it did that is it made singleton objects, and these are singleton objects that can't have their own state, but they can have methods, and they can extend actual classes. So controller is a class, but
A
application is an
singleton
object.
still is also considered to be bad, typically.
What?
A singleton's considered to be bad now.
This is not a single. Scala calls it a singleton object, but it's not.
It's not a global state?
No, it's not. It doesn't have
Doesn't
state.
have state.
Oh, okay.
It's just a container for.
Yeah.
It's
So
not as bad.
when you write an application, this is actually called a companion object. If you had a class named application and you had some private methods in application, this is important. If you have if you have a class called application and you have another object defined like this, the methods that are private in the application class are allowed to be called from this. So the most basic use of these singleton objects is for constructors for your class. This gets in because you see action right here where we're passing it thing in curly brackets. That is almost certainly no. I don't actually know what that is because I've never seen that form before, so we won't discuss it. But nevertheless, in the normal way I would want to write the date object if I was using the Scala date stuff, is I would probably be calling date.now, and classes cannot have methods that you can call on them. Classes, you can only call the methods of a class in an object. So to do that, you create a singleton object that you can call methods on, and it has a special relationship with the underlying class, so your constructors can do things the constructors need to do. What you can take away from this is all of these methods that you see from this web app are constructor methods, and what they're constructing are instances of actions that render the request. So, slight detour into language style. Because it's not a class, because you can't call methods on classes. So,
Naming convention for Scala.
yeah. Well, and also that compiles down to in Java, those are all static methods on a class that's the same as the class name, but with a dollar sign at the end. So that's an implementation. It's at the Scala level, it's not a class. Because you have to, at the basic, if you want to get down low level, this is all weird bytecode in the JVM. So it's all at the level of abstraction. It's all at the level of abstraction that you choose to view it at. We want to view it at the level of abstraction of Scala because that gives us a lot of power. So this views thing is probably imported from one of these. And in fact, we can find it because I saw the directory. There we go. And there we go. This is cool. What the hell is this? This is the templating language that Scala uses. It mentions it in the application thing. Hold on. There we go. That's what we're looking for. So this is what gives us our nice and pretty, and it calls content. So if we change next on Scala, let's get it from there. So, by the way, you could also be using Eclipse to do this. Scala and Play have great integration into Eclipse. The nice thing is if you're the more of the type that does Ruby or Python stuff, you like using your Vim and doing things from the command line. So it's open to both worlds, and you can use it in either environment. So what this is calling here is calling views HTML index, and it's calling like a method. And up here, we're declaring the parameters. I'm actually deducing how this templating language works without reading the documentation, so please bear with me. So